what doesn't kill us makes us stronger, is you hate that. What you like to say is like, what doesn't kill us gives us trauma.
I don't know how to tell you that what you're believing is a lie.
The partner you was with at the time was a bit of a public figure, right? He
Yes.
was a community leader.
I had reached a point where I started like trying to get support from people talking about it. And I was just seeing all closed doors, like nobody was responding. And so I kind of almost accepted that this was going to be my life. And then suddenly it's a stranger who comes into that community who is also a domestic violence survivor. And she shares her story. And my eyes lit up when she shared her story because she was using language that I was secretly looking up online. Well, maybe this is the time to go about this. I said, I want to leave. I'm good with this plan. Please help me. And that was my flight to freedom. That flight was probably one of the first few liberating choices that I made. I was in a prison with no light, and suddenly you come out and the light's so bright in your face that it hurts your eyes. And that's what freedom felt like to me. It was scary.
Some stories are hard to hear, but even harder to live through. Ana Marie Lopez is a domestic violence survivor who went from silence and fear to rebuilding her life and helping others do the same. She's the founder of Brave and Free, a safe haven for survivors who are smashing stigma, challenging stereotypes, and empowering others to be their own version of brave. Now a go-to voice in the community and an award winner of Mental Health Hero of the Year, Ana leads with raw honesty, compassion, and courage. And today, thanks to our sponsor Meals on Me, who are keeping our listeners well with their flavourful, fulfilling, fuss-free meal delivery service, we go beyond the trauma to explore recovery, impact, and the bold decision to lead from lived experience. This is Ana Marie Lopez, brave, honest, and free.
Ana, survivor is one word that I've heard you use to describe yourself. I've heard others use to describe you. And I think you're probably one of the most resilient guests we've ever had on this podcast. And we're over 200 episodes now. And I'm so happy to have you here. So first of all, thank you for being here.
Thank you so much for having me. It is such a pleasure to be here.
Why do people say survivor when they hear your story?
I guess it's because when they listen to the story, they think about me having defeated quite a few odds. And it's one of those stories where I've had to get through a lot from childhood, and then to adolescence, and then my teenage years. And then when I got into specific relationships that were abusive, and then coming out of that, and then getting a diagnosis, and then living with that, and then fighting that battle. And so I think a very common theme throughout is definitely being a survivor and surviving all of that, from the beginning to even where I am right now. And so I'd see why survivor is a word that many would use to describe me.
Often when people hear the word survivor as well, I think a common connotation to that word is strength.
Mm-hmm.
What is perhaps connotations that you have associated with the word survivor? Is it strength? Is there anything else there?
I think it's more than strength. It is definitely capacity. Capacity to what you can endure. Because a lot of times when you hear the word survivor, people will say, well, oh, that made you stronger. Like what you went through made you stronger. And I absolutely don't believe in that. And I absolutely get really mad when I hear that, because it's you who is the strong one, who's enabled you to get through that.
Yeah.
And so that strength's always been in you.
Yeah.
That's why you got through that entire thing, because of your strength. So I really think it's about a person's capacity to take in that much of stress and take in that much of those traumatic experiences or those difficult times and challenges, and to kind of move through it or move on from it to get through it somehow and come out on the other side and still be there.
Yeah. I've heard you say before, along those lines, actually, it's like, what doesn't kill us makes us stronger. As you hate that. What you like to say is like, what doesn't kill us gives us trauma.
Yeah.
Right? And when you said that, I was just like, yeah, like that's spot on. That is spot on. So you mentioned about endurance there, right? Being able to endure stress, and I think your story is beyond stress, right? And I think there's a fine line, and a lot of our listeners, have been through their fair share of stress, if you can say fair share. But it's on a spectrum, isn't there? We have things that we might deem small things. We might have experiences that might seem like incredibly huge, life-changing things. And I just want to say, before we dive into a bit of your backstory, is that no matter where you are and what you're going through, like, it matters. And sometimes we can hear some more extreme stories and feel like, well, I've got nothing to complain about, and maybe there's some shame for feeling sad or stressed or unhappy or depressed or something like that. So for anybody listening to this, I think just, maybe have a little listen with compassion for yourself and for everything you're about to share, because your story is truly remarkable, of somebody who has been through extreme stress, trauma, but yet being able to now turn that into something that is genuinely helping so many people in so many wonderful ways. So again, thank you for being here. And then I'm going to invite you to perhaps share a little bit about maybe what we need to know about you that gives context for what it is you do today.
So my story goes back since I was a little girl, actually. And the furthest that I can remember is probably when I was 2 or 3, and having this experience of fear in my own home. So that was my first experience that kind of set the stage for what was to come. And it was being in a home where it was violent. So my dad struggled with addiction, and when he was under the influence, he would tend to get very violent, not directly to me, but towards my mom and anyone else who may have been around. And so that sort of gave me fear as a baseline and survival as a baseline. So that was the language I spoke, probably my first language. And, that kind of translated into when I went into school. So I went into school being afraid. I went into school feeling like I didn't want to be seen, to hide away. I also had a very good freeze response. So it was like, anything happens, hide. Just shut down. I can't do it. That was what was happening. So at a very young age, my nervous system was already wired for survival. And I was responding in this way where I wasn't fighting back. I was not, well, sometimes I would be running away from situations, but more often than not, I was just shutting down. So system override. And then that kind of went on, and it sort of translated again into relationships, into work, into various parts of my life that brought in even more stress. So it was like this domino effect where I knew stress, and so I was just familiar with it, and that's all that I was going for, even though that's what I didn't want to go for.
It's such an interesting point that you've shared about that being your baseline, because I think for a lot of the work that we do with clients that come to work with us is that stress, whether it's anchored in withdrawal or hiding or freezing, or whether it's anchored into that hyper arousal state of like anxiety and just like intense like mental activity and emotional activity, it's something that a lot of people get stuck in, and they don't always realise they're in it. I also experienced growing up witnessing some domestic violence, and probably not to, I guess, the extent that you've just shared, is it leaves a mark, and no matter how big or small it is. And typically, at least for me, I didn't realise it until much later in life. It was just like, oh, it's just the way I grew up, right? It was just like the norm.
Yeah.
And it's interesting that then these things overspill into our other areas of life. So tell us a little bit more about how did that then overspill for you when you perhaps moved through those younger years, which I can imagine were incredibly difficult.
Yeah, it was incredibly difficult. I mean, for me, it was this fear of just, I had no sense of safety. So no matter where I went or who I went to, was like, I just didn't know how to feel safe with myself, with anybody. Like, people scared me. And I didn't even know what it was about people that scared me, because it was also this piece of unpredictability. So I was like, I don't know what to expect. And if I don't know what to expect with people, then I'm scared. So basically, I'm scared all the time because I don't know what to expect from people. And so this stress factor, even though I was trying to like get away with it, it's all I knew. And then I ended up trying to get away from this war zone of a home where I was so done with seeing what was happening, experiencing what was happening. And then I ended up getting into something else that was equally stressful and was an equal measure of, or if perhaps worse actually, of domestic violence. Because then from there, I ended up getting married at a really young age, at 19 actually. And then I wasn't able to read the signs, or even if I did, I think they were very normalized for me. So stress was like, oh, stress is a part of life. Oh, abuse is a part of relationship problems. It's all okay. We just have to weigh in on which stressor is worse. Is it the current situation at home, or is it this one where I'm actually getting some kind of love and attention that's mixed in here with the abuse, which at the time I didn't call abuse. So I obviously went in that direction.
It's interesting that we can find safety in stress. That fascinates me, and then that in itself can sometimes become addictive, right? It's almost like a fish in water that doesn't know it's really in water.
Yeah.
So you're born and raised here in the UAE, right?
Yes.
You've been through a turbulent upbringing, to understatement, a turbulent upbringing. And this sense of stress and the impact that's had on you, your identity, your personality, kind of growing up in your own behaviours, then led you into a relationship, 19, married.
Yeah.
Tell us more about that marriage, if that's okay, and kind of what transpired over those coming years.
So I kind of went into that actually thinking I was making a change in the patterns, because the way that the relationship presented itself to me was as if this was a different relationship. So it was supposed to be a safe relationship. There was a cultural, spiritual dynamics there that was mixed in, that kind of made me put my guard down. It was like, okay, well, this is a person that I can trust. But unfortunately, I learned later in life that, abuse can be very strategic. And it was exactly that. And it was a lot of abuse hidden behind specific personas, a very charismatic person.
Yeah.
And the abuse kind of built up from a very, I would say, in small ways, in ways that were almost passive, that you don't recognize. And you kind of they're all normalized in some form or manner, because you go to people and they're like, oh, but this is normal, what are you making a fuss about? And then you start to internalize things, because then you go back in time and you're like, well, that happened with my mom and dad. And so I guess what everyone's saying is true. I need to stop overreacting to things. But then things take a turn when it starts to get from, verbally abusive or being manipulative, or there's gaslighting, to it being physical or sexual in nature. And the abuse really, turns up a notch. And then it becomes this thing where on your full-fledged survival. And it's more like, okay, how am I here? What am I doing? And how do I get out of this? Because you're completely isolated. And there were times where I didn't have my phone for periods of time. My laptop was monitored with spyware. I didn't have a bank account or insurance coverage. I wasn't allowed to do a job, So it was this total thing of where I had all of my agency and autonomy taken away from me.
Mm.
And so there I am, just completely isolated, and my survival modes completely kicked in. And I'm just like, I just need to do whatever I can to just want to even go another day.
Yeah.
So that was kind of what life was like for 6 years. So it kind of started subtly and then built up and built up and built up until it reached a point of, I can't do this anymore.
Yeah, it's such a, I believe it's a unique situation that you were in. You will probably correct me on that with the work that you do today. Maybe it's not as unique as we think, but the partner you was with at the time was a bit of a public figure, right? He
Yes.
was a community leader.
Yes.
In a specific religion.
Yes.
And so to the outside world, that relationship was like he's
Mm-hmm.
the man that we all respect, and
Yeah.
he's not a monster behind closed doors,
Yes.
essentially.
Yeah.
And you were living like the complete opposite to that. How did you make sense of that dynamic, if you did?
I did definitely made sense of that dynamic. I think the fact that, first it was normalized, but then also the background experience that I had at home
Yep.
kind of give me some information and data to work with.
Yep.
And so automatically I was able to see, I think 1 year into the marriage, that, well, these are two different people. Well, this somebody here who's presenting himself to be someone he's not.
Yeah.
In the public eye, very charismatic, wants to be seen as a really good person, a really kind person, looked up to.
Yeah.
A lot of grandiosity there. But behind closed doors, it's just totally different. It was a total monster, and you could see what measures he was taking to achieve those goals, where he was seen as this specific person in this specific light.
Yep.
And had this specific reputation.
Yeah.
And it was really difficult to be in that space, because when you're behind closed doors and you're seeing certain things that they're doing, their behaviors, whether it's towards me, towards their family, towards those people who believe them,
Yeah.
and then you see them outside and all of these people are just falling for it. You're just like, I don't know how to tell you that what you're believing is a lie.
Yeah.
Because it's so believable. I'll always say it's like Oscar winning.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. How was that for you? You mentioned like isolation being a part of it. And, I think a lot of people that go through stress, and this is a big generalization, or trauma, is very hard anyway to speak up about something, no matter what that is.
Mm-hmm.
And you was perhaps in a situation where not only is it hard to talk about these kinds of things anyway, you're also challenged with this obstacle of this illusion of the face that he's presenting. How did that impact you, and how did that shift gears into you actually eventually taking some steps towards being able to come out of that relationship?
I don't want to say the word gullible, but it was just that they believed him so much. And to see that he fought for that, to be believed, and he would go to any extent. I had reached a point where I started like trying to get support from people talking about it, but I wasn't getting the support that I needed. There was a lot of stigma. There was a lot of stereotyping. Of course, there was a lot of, as you know, cultural, religious influences there. And I was just seeing all closed doors. Like nobody was responding in a way that I expected. Everyone was expecting me to make it work, to try to do something, to go to therapy, to do anything but leave. And inside of me, I could see that you are not understanding what I'm trying to tell you. Either you're ignoring me, you're in denial, or you have absolutely no idea what I'm talking about. Maybe you've never experienced what I'm saying, and therefore it's difficult to believe. And so at some point I lost hope, to be very honest.
Yeah.
I was like, I think this is it, because there's no way out. I did not have any way of getting out of the situation. And so I kind of almost accepted that this was going to be my life. And to a point where there was a lot of, suicidal ideation, there were suicidal attempts when I had reached this point where I'm just like, I don't know if I can make this the rest of my life. And if there's no way out, then I've reached this state of hopelessness. And well, the only way out is to unalive myself. So thankfully, I lived through those experiences. And it was finally the fact that I wouldn't say it was my courage, but really it was a support system that showed up. And that is exactly what helped me get out of that situation. If that support system wasn't there, I don't know if I'd be sitting with you here today, to be very honest with you. As much as I was a part and, I left or I did what I had to do to get out of the situation, that support was so monumental. It was so important. It was so crucial. And it doesn't surprise me because community plays a huge role in our lives.
It does.
And even with our mental health. So even in this situation, when it came to getting somebody and giving someone the support they needed to find the courage came in the form of people.
Oh, thank goodness for that support system showing up. Then you are here today, because it's been quite the journey. When you say that support system showed up, what do you mean by that?
Well, 6 years was how long I was in that marriage, and 6 years of trying to speak to people, whether they were family members, they were so-called friends, they were so-called people who were part of the community that we were in. 6 years of all of that, and being shown diplomacy or being shown that, oh, we can't help you, it's too much, the stakes are too high for us. And then suddenly it's a stranger who comes into that community who is also a domestic violence survivor. And she shares her story. And my eyes lit up when she shared her story, because she was using language that I was secretly looking up online through some random person's blog and trying to find validation in my experience. So I'm like, oh my goodness, like a small glimmer of hope. And so I think about 2 days later, I was like, this is my last attempt to share with somebody. And if this doesn't work, then I guess nothing else will. So I just took my chances. I risked it, and I shared. And in a split second, like I hardly had to say too much. Like I didn't have to say too much for her to understand. And she said, I understand. I get it. And she said, I know what you're trying to tell me. She said, either, you're going to do something to yourself or he's going to do something to you, and you need to get out of this. And I said, exactly. I need to get out because I do not feel safe. It's reached that point. And it was a stranger. So basically a stranger turned Samaritan, turned friend.
Angel in disguise.
Yeah, who literally put everything on the line to help me. And that is such profound kindness, which I didn't see in people who I knew, but somebody who just like knew me a couple of days, and we just connected over a lived experience.
Which in itself is a beautiful thing, isn't it? I mean, even though the situation wasn't so beautiful, you, just to give a bit of context for our listeners, the leaving was obviously complicated anyway,
yes,
given the extent of danger that you were in.
Yeah.
But it took you some time to be able to access your passport and then to actually exit from that marriage.
Yeah.
And come to a crossroads, really.
Yes. Yeah.
Tell us about that. I don't want to tell your story. I'm just so keen for our listeners to know.
Yeah. So, as I was telling you earlier that I didn't have an insurance, didn't have a bank account, I wasn't allowed to work. So one of the things that I would do is I would hide money under my bed. So every time, like suppose it was like a birthday or someone just gave money or there's some kind of money that I was getting from the little work that I was doing within that community, I wouldn't spend it. I would just be, hiding it under the bed. And so eventually I had over 6 years collected 5,000 dirhams. And then it was like, after speaking to this friend, I was like, well, I have this money, but what can we do? Like, how can I leave? Like, we're talking about leaving, but is going to the police an option? And at the point, I was not comfortable going because I didn't know what my rights were. I didn't know if I would be sent back home. I didn't know. I was like, I'm not willing to take that risk because I've already been told that if I ever do try to do that, that it's not going to work. And so she started then exploring nonprofits in other countries to see if they would be of help. Because at the time, what we have now, which is the Foundation for Women and Children here in Dubai, I don't believe that existed at the time, or it was just starting off. And she was exploring that, and she's like, well, I found an NGO that actually responded. They're based in New Delhi, and they help survivors of domestic violence. And what do you think about going to New Delhi? And I said, yeah, I'll go anywhere. Like, I'll just take me to the side of the road. Like, I'll do anything. I'd reached that point of desperation that even the unknown was less scary than the hell that I was living. And so I was like, well, but there's a problem. I said, I don't have my passport. And she's like, what do you mean? And I said, well, my passport is under lock and key. So my passport was kept in a separate bedroom in my ex-husband's parents' bedroom in a study, locked with like all of their other passports. And so what I would do is I was trying to figure out where exactly it was. So whenever they would leave or go somewhere for an event or go out somewhere, and I had the house to myself, probably like the housemaid was there. So I would do these trips to their bedroom where I would time myself and I would go to their room. I would look for the key. I would open the drawer. I would see that my passport's there. Then I would lock it. I'd keep the key where it was, and I'd go back and I'd time myself and I say, well, okay, how much time did I take to do that? Okay, let's do it again. So every opportunity I had, I would do those runs to muster up, to build the strength, but to also kind of be like, if the moment comes, I can do this. And that's what I kept doing. And then eventually one day what happens is that they needed to go to a conference in the US. And all of the family members had a visa, except me. So they said, well, here's the process. Here's what you've got to do. And so I applied for my visa. We had to go for the interview in Abu Dhabi. And so it was strange enough, my ex-husband at the time didn't give me any financial documentation, no supporting documents. So it felt as if like he didn't really want me on that trip, but he was doing it for the heck of it. And we went, and the lady at the counter's like, do you think this is a joke? And I said, well, my husband's just told me this is this. And she's like, you're it's denied. Your visa's denied. Go reapply and bring back your documents next time. And I was like, okay. And so I go back home, and family's really angry. It's like, what were you thinking to not, give her any documentation? How is she going to get her visa? And so they're like, apply again. And this time, instead of applying, say, for the next available appointment, I picked a time that was about 2 or 3 weeks away. And I never told anybody. I just said, well, the appointment slot that I got was on this specific date. And then I just kept the passport with me and just went to see if anyone would remember to ask me for my passport. And fortunately, no one did. And so I noticed that, and then I told my friend, I said, well, no one's asked me for my passport. Well, maybe this is the time to go about this. And I gave her my 5,000 dirhams. I'm like, here it is. I said, I want to leave. I'm good with this plan. Please help me just, get this up and running, because the level of stress that I'm under now about getting caught is just blanking me out completely. And I do not think that I'm going to be able to handle this on my own logistically.
Yep.
So she was so kind enough to take the money. She bought me the ticket. She got in touch with the NGO. She did whatever she possibly could to help me with all of the things on the ground. And they even did this thing where they were like, we will get a car for you, and you just need to get in the car and just, go. And so the day came, she's like, well, your ticket's booked for so-and-so date. I said, okay. And usually on that date is where we have the community gatherings. And so I tried fake being sick and to stay home, but obviously he didn't buy that. And he was like, no, I don't care if you're sick, you have to come with me. And so we go, and I just have my passport in my pocket. Like, that's what I have. And we go there, we're sitting down, and they tell me, they're like, well, at this specific time, that's when we need you to go to this specific place and get in the car and take you to the airport. And I'm like, okay. And suddenly when it comes to around that time, my ex-husband goes missing. Like, no one can find him. We don't know where he is. And I start to get stressed out. I'm like, well, what if I get out of that hall and he's there and he sees me and then I'm caught?
Yep.
So I'm like, no one can find him. And then I decide, well, I'm going to go anyway. And if I get caught, I'll just be like, I was going to the bathroom. So I get out. He's not there. I go to the back, get in the car. I'm screaming and howling. They drive me to somewhere near the airport. I take a taxi, and then I get to the airport. I'm shaking, and I'm just like with my passport and check in. I'm like, here, check me in. And I go to the immigration, and I just keep looking back. And I'm like, he's going to come. He's going to come. Like, there is no way in how this is not going to work. And that's all I kept doing, just looking back, looking in front, looking back. Eventually, I reached my boarding gate. And, well, it's not usual that an Emirates flight gets delayed, but it was delayed by about, 40 minutes or something of the sort. And then I got more stressed. I was like, oh, God, like, why is this happening today? But somehow I made it through all of that. I got on the flight. And that was my flight to freedom. That flight was probably one of the first few liberating choices that I made. I was crying throughout the flight. And that's my story of escaping that situation.
It's so easy for an outsider or somebody that's never experienced something like that to be like, oh, why didn't you just leave?
Yeah.
Why don't you just walk out the front door? But there's so much more than that, isn't there? There's physical abuse in the mix, but it's the psychological abuse that keeps you in this like prison that you can't. So it must have taken so much courage to overcome that fear just when you were going to visit the drawer that your passport was in. I can only imagine like that was also, maybe it didn't feel like at the time, but a step to liberation, right? A step free of this. And the fact that you was able to find that window of opportunity. And at that moment of, I'm doing it. It's going to be hard, but you're going to do it. Is incredible and incredibly moving. And it's interesting, right? Because this is just part of your story, right? Like, even though it's a huge part of your story and a big part of your story that I'm very grateful that you've shared today, because there might be somebody listening to this that might be like you were, looking on a blog trying to find these breadcrumbs of and somebody that could relate, that maybe isn't so lucky yet to have that stranger pop up to be able to support. So it took you, I think, was it 4 years to come back to the UAE after spending 4 years in New Delhi, almost like transitioning back into some semblance of normal life. What was that like for you, and what was that journey kind of back to now? Like, what was going through your mind during those years?
That was, I would say the second battle. When I left, I never thought about things like trauma or what's going to be the impact of what I'd gone through. all I thought about was survival. And I was like, I just need to get out of here and I just need to start a new life. And that's going to be enough for me. But that period and ongoing has been quite the journey in itself, because it's really been a battle. One where I had to find my sense of self. I literally had to rediscover myself. It was as if I had come out of prison and I was in a prison with no light. And suddenly you come out and the light's so bright in your face that it hurts your eyes. And that's what freedom felt like to me. It was scary.
Yeah.
So I was going and doing things as an adult for the first time that probably people my age were already really good at.
How old was you at this point?
I was probably about 26 or something. Yeah, I think 26 was when I'd left. I was about 26. And so that was really tough, because people were probably like working jobs. They were already like on their way. And here I was just trying to figure myself out.
Yeah.
And, I was in a place where I didn't know anybody. So I started working for the nonprofit that actually helped me out. They tried to put me into like marketing agencies or communication agencies, and I just couldn't. I was not in that state of mind. I started getting anxiety attacks. I didn't even know what anxiety attacks were, but I was just like, I wouldn't show up to work the next day. I would do things like that. And all I would say to them is that, I just want to work with you, because I understood that they became my safe place.
Yep.
And I felt safe being there physically.
Yep.
And I felt safe even kind of venturing into this new career or work life with them itself. Like everything else felt very unsafe to me and was very triggering. So I started working with them. And the work they did was obviously very empowering, because they worked with survivors and victims of domestic violence. They were working with a lot of other communities, marginalized communities, widowed women. So lots of empowering work. And they just said to me, well, you just take care of communications. And they didn't put any kind of limitations on me. They just let me, grow and get into my own groove of things at my own pace, which was something I was very fortunate to have. And I blossomed there, because I started, obviously there was already the fire in me that I wanted to help people in a way that I wished I was helped. And so that automatically came out of me that, yes, I want to do something. I want to pay it forward as well. And a lot of media would come to them, because they would like, do you have any survivors or victims of domestic abuse that we can interview for studies? And I remember the first interview they put me on was on BBC Radio.
First one. Let's go with the BBC Radio. I love it.
And I was like, I was a mouse, and my voice was hardly coming out. And I remember the founder saying, like, raise your voice up a little bit, but I was just trying my best to talk. And that was like my first interview that I'd ever done. And then when I saw the impact that it made and the ripple effect that it was happening, because usually there's a lot of shame and stigma around this. And so people don't want to talk about these experiences. And suddenly there's someone coming and talking about it. And that kind of created waves. And so my founder, every time there was an opportunity, she would be like, would you like to share? Would you like to share? And I would just keep saying yes. At that time, I was saying yes because I couldn't say no.
Which is another journey of its own, right? I think it's so interesting, because we talk a lot on this podcast, particularly this season, around the link between stress, performance and or recovery, and impact.
Yeah.
And often, I don't know, as human beings, we like to think things are linear,
Yeah.
right? And okay, we overcome stress, then we perform really well, and then we make an impact, right? And actually, what I'm hearing from your journey and your story is actually that the giving back was a big part of your recovery. I mean, just that we were speaking before the recording today, is that just sharing your story can be quite therapeutic as
Yeah.
well, right?
Yeah.
So tell me a little bit more about how you're giving back today.
So you so rightly said that this has been such a huge piece in my, my healing journey. The part where I want to do more for others. And so when it started with that nonprofit work and then sharing my story and then running these fundraising, these crowdfunding programs, and just feeling really, really fulfilled in the work that I was doing, it kind of almost made my pain fade away. It just felt a bit like medicine. And so I saw the impact that it was having on me. And so I just kept going. I kept going. Then I came back to Dubai and I thought I would continue that work here. But it was really difficult to get into nonprofit sector here.
Yep.
As much as I tried. And so then I said, let me get into the health sector. But it all felt very corporate.
Yep.
And one of the ways that I would express myself when I was back in, my abusive marriage was I would journal. And writing, creativity was something that I'd always go to express myself as an outlet. And so I thought to myself, well, I think COVID had almost hit, and people were like working from home, and then there was a little bit more time. And I said, well, why don't I just use this stuff that I've been writing and put it on Instagram? Like, I'm seeing a lot of others put their, they're having pages on mental health and creating awareness. I said, why don't I do that? And so I just started doing that. And I came up with the name, and I'm like, yeah, Brave and Free sounds really nice. And, it resonates with my story very much. And I just started off and going back to my journals, picking up pieces, putting it there. And I just kept doing it because it felt therapeutic. It felt like a creative outlet. And at the same time, I felt like, okay, this is my way of creating awareness. I don't know who's listening. I don't know who's following this page, but I'm doing it and it makes me feel good. So let me just do it. And there wasn't really that much of momentum. It was like, I think after a year, maybe I got a year or 2,000 followers. It was just very slowly building up. And in 2023, I reached a point in my recovery where, as you said, recovery is not linear. So I went, boop, I hit rock bottom. Everything that I thought I was doing right just wasn't working anymore. All of the tools, all of the therapy, the medication that I was on is not helping. And I'm just like, I'm exhausted. I'm done. I keep failing. I keep making mistakes. I'm so dysregulated, and then people are leaving. So everything's a mess. And I said, I can't do this. And I'd reached a point where I think I didn't leave bed for about a week, and I wasn't eating. I'm like, I can't. I'm done. And I remember this was a point where it was really lonely as well, because a lot of people had walked out because even they couldn't understand the trauma responses. They couldn't understand the dysregulation. They couldn't understand how I was reacting with all of that pent up pain and anger and frustration. And so I went to my page, and then I started using that pain, and my content started taking a turn where I was expressing from a more authentic space. And I suddenly start to see that people were engaging with it even more. And so I was going there to feel heard all of a sudden. And that very community that I'd created for awareness and all of that suddenly became a community for me. It was like this community of people that I had no idea who they were, but they were showing up every day. And I just kept seeing the impact that it was making. It's like someone saying, well, thank you, that's me. Or I feel so less alone, or thank you for believing me. And this was just from a post that I was putting with a caption that was just very, very real. And it was such a beautiful exchange. It almost, I would say, played a huge role in saving my life and in lifting me back up. And so with that pain, I used it as, I turned it into purpose, I would say. And the community just grew and people start feeling seen. And today we're at 100,000 followers.
Incredible.
And tomorrow's our 5th birthday.
Oh, congratulations. Happy birthday. You also, you kind of popped up on my radar, winning the Mental Health Hero of the Year here in the UAE, didn't you?
Yeah.
And it's a huge testament to the work that you do and this sense of community that you've created, maybe even by accident to some extent.
Yes.
But from being authentic, from being intentional, from channeling a lot of pain that you've been into to now being able to pay it forward. I think that's something that's quite rare.
Yeah.
Because, trauma is no small feat, and it's a journey that I would imagine you're still on and probably forever will be, as do most that are experiencing different types of trauma. But I think it's very special when somebody can use it to amplify a message and a sense of safety for others and a sense of hope for others. Because I'm sure for every one person that reached out to you on Instagram, there was probably 1,000 more that are sitting there quietly, maybe suffering, and just feeling so grateful and not using their voice to even share that with you, let alone to turn it into a cause. So what's next for the Brave and Free community?
Well, one thing's for sure. I want to continue to keep it brave. And by that, I mean stand out and be as real and as authentic as possible. I know in this space, we are trying to do a lot of psychoeducation around trauma, but it's really hard to talk about the messy stuff. It's really hard to challenge the systems. It's really hard to challenge the bystanders. Sometimes we play it nice. And for me, when it comes to Brave and Free, I'm all about whatever I do next, I want to keep it as bold as possible, as real as possible, because we've reached a time where there's no space for playing it nice anymore, for having surface level conversations. It's the ugly, messy things that are hiding beneath the rug that people want to hear and connect with, because that's the stuff that people are ashamed to talk about. And so that's what I strive to do every day, is to help people or empower people to be their own brave, as I call it. And that is basically for them to feel free in this space of this community that we've created, so that they feel like, okay, I have space here where I can talk about the things that matter. And now I'm empowered because I have that support. And so now I'm empowered to make decisions in my life that are brave, that I couldn't do before because I didn't have that support system. And I say be your own brave because the definition of brave is different for everybody, right? What is brave to me is not brave to you. It could be brave going on a crazy ride. It could be brave saying, no, I don't want to go on that ride. And so it's about understanding that, okay, I am making a decision and this is brave for me, and I'm going to make it irrespective of what the world thinks of it. And so I'm kind of doing this, of course, through the community, doing it through my coaching. So I do something called post-traumatic growth coaching, which is sort of transforming. It's that whole piece of transforming what you've been through and turning it into something, you could say positive, or something that really makes a difference and is purposeful. And that helps you kind of move forward with the pain, not from it, because there's a lot of talk on let's move on from the pain, and I'm like, no, I move with it, because my pain is with me, and I'm fooling everybody if I'm going to say that it's in the past, because it's not. It's with me, but I'm carrying it with me because it has superpowers now. And so that's what I want to do what my pain did to me. And that is like the way I found that purpose in the pain. And that purpose is now giving me a reason to wake up every day because, being diagnosed with CPTSD and living with all of these symptoms is not easy. Like I can wake up one day, I'm exhausted, or I can have my vivid dreams every night. And so I feel like I haven't rested. There are days where I can't function and I feel like a failure. And then you think to yourself, well, what am I living for? Like, is this the life that I've signed up for? And I've done like over 10 years of therapy, over 10 years of medication. I've tried everything. I continue to try everything. And suddenly you need something bigger than yourself to be able to just keep going. And sometimes when you find this purpose, that is so personal to you because it's born out of pain, somehow that purpose is so much bigger than you. And it gives you a reason to like wake up every day. You're like, wow, there's something that's bigger than me. There are people out there who I'm making an impact on. So if I can't do this for me, I'm going to do this for them. So yeah.
God, Anna, thank you so much for being your own brave, but also for coming and sharing your story with us. I mean, I can't believe the time has flown as it has, and we're definitely going to do a part 2 at some point for sure, because I want to talk a lot more about how you're living with it now and different ways that perhaps somebody that is experiencing it now could really, really kind of adopt for their own sense of recovery or where they are on the journey. But until then, where can our listeners come and find the Brave and Free community?
Well, they can come find us on Instagram at I am Brave and Free. If they'd like to explore coaching, then they can get onto braveandfree.co/trauma coaching. I'm also launching a new workbook that's about rediscovering yourself after abuse. So it's all about, trying to regain your sense of agency, your autonomy, reclaiming your voice and all of that. So that's all coming up, and whatever people would like to find, they can get to these 2 links and they'll probably get all of the other information, whatever's coming up
we'll
next.
We'll put it all in the show notes so everybody will be able to find you. But Anna, thank you so much again for coming and sharing your story. You really are not just an inspiration, but you're a storyteller. You're somebody who is able to probably articulate what a lot of people can't. And I think that's incredibly powerful. So thank you for being you, and thank you for being here today.
Quick one, as our long-term audience, you will know that our show has grown a lot over the years, and we're thrilled to share with you that we have our very first sponsor. But please don't worry, we're not going to suddenly bombard you with loads of ads. We just want to take a moment to say a big thank you to Meals on Me, who's not only sponsoring us, but they're also fueling us. Meals on Me is a food, meal prep and delivery service who understands that wellness isn't about shortcuts. It's about choosing better every single day. They keep it real with fresh, wholesome meals that fit into your life. For me, when I'm rushing through the day and pushing my limits, Meals on Me powers me on. And the best bit that I find is that there's so much variety and every meal tastes amazing, especially compared to others that we've used in the past. So good nutrition underpins our ability to cope with stress and perform at our highest levels. But it's often an area where most of our clients will struggle. So Meals on Me make it easy, effortless and enjoyable. So check them out today. A special link for you is in the show notes. Thank you to them and thank you to you.